When Randall Drake, a hardworking mechanic, doesn't hesitate to help a strange woman stranded in the rain, he has no idea that this encounter will lead him straight to the heart of corporate intrigue, and perhaps even a deep relationship. Will he rise to the challenge, or will he lose himself in the shadows? The rain fell in sheets, turning the cracked asphalt of Randall's driveway into a mosaic of puddles that reflected the dim glow of the single overhead bulb swaying in the wind. It was one of those evenings where the world seemed to conspire against you, where even the simplest tasks felt like climbing a mountain. Randall wiped his grease-streaked hands on an already dirty rag and glanced at the clock hanging crookedly on the wall. 7:45. He should have closed up an hour ago, but with the pile of half-finished repairs cluttering the garage, there was no time for quitting early. He sighed, tossing the rag onto the workbench, and reached for the broom leaning against the wall. His movements were mechanical, as he swept sawdust and shards of metal into a corner. The fire 2 months ago had left scars, not just on the charred beams of the workshop, but on Randall himself. Insurance had covered barely enough to keep him afloat, forcing him to dip into savings he didn't have to replace tools and equipment. Every day since had been a battle, each repair job a lifeline keeping him from drowning. The sound of tires splashing through water snapped him out of his thoughts. Randall straightened, squinting through the rain-streaked window of the garage. A sleek sedan sat idling by the curb, its hazard lights blinking like a distress signal. Randall frowned. This wasn't exactly the kind of neighborhood where those cars made house calls. Curiosity tugged at him, and after grabbing his jacket off a hook near the door, he stepped outside. The cold rain hit him immediately, soaking through his shirt within seconds. As he approached the car, the driver's side window rolled down, revealing a woman in her early 30s. Her dark hair clung to her face, damp strands framing wide, anxious eyes. She wore a tailored blazer that looked entirely out of place amid the grit and grime of Randall's street. "Hi," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but my car, it just stopped working." She gestured helplessly at the dashboard, lit faintly by warning lights. "Do you think you could take a look?" Randall hesitated only briefly before nodding. Something about her tone, the raw vulnerability beneath the polished exterior, struck a chord deep inside him. He motioned for her to pop the hood and circled around to the front of the vehicle. Rainwater dripped steadily from the edges of the hood as he unlatched it and propped it open. The engine bay was pristine, untouched by the chaos of real-world wear and tear. Randall couldn't help but chuckle softly under his breath. Whatever problem this thing had, it sure hadn't been caused by years of neglect. He leaned in, scanning the components quickly. Years of experience allowed him to diagnose issues faster than most people could read a manual. After a few moments, he spotted it, a loose connection in the wiring harness. Simple enough, though it must have felt catastrophic to someone unfamiliar with engines. Pulling a small multi-tool from his pocket, Randall set to work, his fingers moving with practiced ease despite the rain soaking through his gloves. "You're lucky," he called over his shoulder, raising his voice to be heard over the storm. "It's not serious, just a loose wire. Give me a minute." The woman nodded, though her expression remained tense. Through the windshield, Randall caught glimpses of her fidgeting with something in her lap. A phone, perhaps? But it didn't matter. All that mattered right now was fixing the damn car. True to his word, Randall had the issue resolved in less than 5 minutes. With a final twist of the wrench, he secured the connection and slammed the hood shut. Wiping his hands again, he walked back to the driver's side window, which lowered once more. "It should be fine now," he said, offering a reassuring smile. "Just drive carefully until you can get it checked properly." Relief washed over her features, and she exhaled sharply, as if she'd been holding her breath the entire time. "Thank you," she said earnestly, reaching for her purse. "How much do I owe you?" Randall shook his head firmly. "Nothing. Helping someone stranded in the rain doesn't come with a price tag." Her brows furrowed in surprise, but then softened into gratitude. "You don't know how much this means," she murmured, her gaze meeting his briefly before dropping to her lap. For a fleeting moment, Randall noticed a faint bruise on her wrist peeking out from beneath her sleeve. Before he could say anything, she continued, "Really, thank you." She started the car, the engine purring smoothly, and gave him a small wave before pulling away. Randall watched her taillights disappear into the rainy night, a strange sensation settling in his chest. There was something about her, something unspoken, hidden behind those polite words and grateful smiles. And as he turned back toward the garage, the weight of her parting phrase lingered in his mind. The morning after the storm dawned gray and overcast, the kind of day that matched Randall's mood perfectly. He had tossed and turned all night, replaying the encounter with the woman in the sedan over and over in his mind. Something about her had lodged itself in his thoughts like a splinter he couldn't quite pull free. By sunrise, exhaustion had settled heavily on him, but there was no time for rest. Life didn't pause just because your brain refused to shut off. Randall arrived at the garage early, as usual, dragging himself through the door with a cup of coffee in one hand and a wrench in the other. The air smelled faintly of oil and damp concrete, a scent he'd grown accustomed to over the years. It was comforting in its own way, a reminder of the life he'd built despite the fire, the debts, and the endless uphill battles. Still, comfort didn't pay the bills, and today's schedule was packed with repairs that barely scraped together enough cash to cover rent. He had just finished tightening the bolts on an old truck when the sharp crunch of tires rolling onto his driveway caught his attention. Randall glanced up, squinting against the dull light filtering through the clouds. A sleek black sedan came to a stop outside the garage, its polished surface gleaming even in the gloomy weather. For a moment, Randall thought it might be the same car from last night, the one belonging to the mysterious woman, but this vehicle was different. Newer, more expensive. A man stepped out, dressed in a tailored suit that screamed corporate success. His shoes were so shiny they reflected the puddles beneath them, and his tie was knotted with surgical precision. Randall straightened instinctively, wiping his hands on a rag before approaching the stranger. "Can I help you?" Randall asked, trying to sound casual despite the knot forming in his stomach. People like this didn't show up at his garage unless they were lost or desperate. The man offered a polite smile, extending a manicured hand. "Mr. Randall Drake, I presume?" "That's me," Randall replied, shaking the man's hand cautiously. "What can I do for you?" "My name is Michael Grayson," the man said, retrieving a leather-bound business card holder from his pocket. He handed Randall a pristine card embossed with the logo of Portland Motors, a sprawling network of high-end auto repair shops known for swallowing smaller businesses whole. Randall's pulse quickened as he read the title beneath Grayson's name, Senior Recruitment Officer. "I'm here on behalf of Portland Motors," Grayson continued smoothly, his tone measured and deliberate. "We've been monitoring your work for some time now, Mr. Drake, and we believe you could be an invaluable asset to our team." Randall blinked, momentarily speechless. Monitoring his work? Him? A mechanic struggling to keep his head above water? The absurdity of the statement hit him like a slap. "I'm sorry," he said finally, shaking his head. "You've got the wrong guy. I run a tiny shop in the middle of nowhere. What could Portland Motors possibly want with me?" Grayson chuckled lightly, though there was no humor in the sound. "Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Drake. We hear stories about your creativity, your integrity, your ability to solve problems others deem unsolvable. Those are qualities we value highly at Portland Motors." Randall crossed his arms, skepticism etched across his face. "Reputation? I don't exactly advertise." Grayson's smile faltered slightly, but only for a fraction of a second. "Let's just say we have ways of identifying talent," he said vaguely. "Regardless, the details aren't important. What matters is this. We're offering you a position as supervisor at one of our premium locations. The salary is competitive and the benefits package is, well, let's just say it's generous." Randall stared at him, stunned into silence. Those phrases belonged to another world, one far removed from the grease-stained reality he inhabited daily. He glanced down at the business card in his hand, then back at Grayson. "There are plenty of mechanics out there who are better qualified than I am." Grayson tilted his head slightly, studying Randall with an intensity that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "Qualifications aren't everything," he said evenly. "We need someone who understands hard work, who values honesty and dedication. Someone like you." The words sounded rehearsed, almost too perfect. Randall frowned, suspicion creeping into his gut. This felt less like an opportunity and more like a trap. "And what's the catch?" he asked pointedly. "Because nothing comes without strings attached." Grayson hesitated, his polished demeanor cracking ever so slightly. "No catch," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Just an offer. But I will say this, we're looking to expand our presence in areas where independent shops thrive. Your experience could help us bridge the gap between our brand and the community." Randall's jaw tightened. That confirmed it. They weren't interested in him, they were interested in eliminating competition. If he accepted the job, it would mean closing his garage, leaving behind the neighborhood he'd served for years. And for what? To become a cog in a corporate machine? Still, the numbers danced tantalizing through his mind. The salary Grayson mentioned would erase his debts overnight. The benefits could provide stability he hadn't felt in years. But at what cost? Could he really walk away from everything he'd worked so hard to rebuild after the fire? "I'll think about it," Randall said finally, stuffing the business card into his pocket. "Thanks for stopping by." Grayson nodded, clearly disappointed but not entirely surprised. "Take your time," he said, turning back toward his car. "But don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often." As the car pulled away, Randall exhaled sharply, leaning against the garage wall. His mind raced with questions. How had they found him? Why now? And most importantly, why did he feel like accepting their offer would lead him down a path he wasn't ready to walk? For the rest of the day, Randall worked mechanically, his thoughts consumed by the proposal. Every clink of metal against metal echoed louder than usual. Every shadow seemed darker. When evening fell and the last customer left, he locked up the garage and sat alone in the dim light, staring at the business card on the table in front of him. Something about Grayson's visit gnawed at him, not just the offer itself, but the timing. Had Sophia Reed mentioned him to someone at Portland Motors? Was that why she'd driven past his shop that night? Or was it all just coincidence? A twist of fate pulling him into something bigger than he could comprehend? Whatever the truth was, Randall knew one thing for certain. His quiet, predictable life was about to change, whether he liked it or not. The decision to visit Portland Motors headquarters gnawed at Randall for days. He wrestled with the offer, turning it over in his mind like a mechanic inspecting a faulty engine part, searching for cracks, flaws, anything that might reveal its true nature. Accepting felt like stepping into quicksand, while rejecting it meant clinging to a life teetering on the edge of collapse. Yet curiosity tugged at him relentlessly. Who were these people and why had they singled him out? On the appointed morning, Randall dressed carefully, trading his usual grease-stained jeans and flannel shirt for something clean and presentable. A pair of dark slacks and a pressed button-down he'd bought years ago but rarely worn. As he stood in front of the mirror tying his boots, he caught himself frowning at his reflection. This wasn't really him. But then again, maybe this was exactly who he needed to be right now. A man willing to face uncertainty head-on. The drive to Portland Motors' downtown office tower loomed large in his mind as he navigated the city streets. Skyscrapers pierced the sky, their glass facades reflecting the pale sunlight filtering through scattered clouds. When he finally pulled up to the building, an imposing structure that seemed to stretch endlessly upward, he parked awkwardly in the visitor lot, feeling out of place among rows of luxury sedans and SUVs. Inside, the lobby was a cathedral of modern design. Marble floors gleamed beneath recessed lighting, and abstract sculptures adorned alcoves along the walls. At the center of it all hung a massive photograph mounted high above the reception desk. Randall's breath caught when he saw it. There she was, Sophia Reed, standing beside an older man whose stern expression radiated authority. Beneath the image, a plaque read, "Otto Reed, founder and visionary Sophia Reed, CEO." His stomach churned. So she hadn't just been some random woman stranded in the rain. She was the CEO of Portland Motors, the very company dangling this life-altering opportunity in front of him. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. Her car trouble, the bruise on her wrist, the cryptic gratitude, and Grayson's vague assurances about reputation and integrity. It hadn't been coincidence, it had been calculated. Before Randall could process further, a young woman approached him with a clipboard and a practiced smile. "Mr. Drake? I'm Judith, your escort today. If you'll follow me, Ms. Reed is expecting you." He nodded numbly, following her toward the elevators. The ride up felt interminable, each ding of passing floors amplifying the tension coiling in his chest. When the doors slid open on the executive level, Randall stepped into a world unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Plush carpet muffled his footsteps, and framed awards lined the walls, celebrating decades of corporate success. Judith led him down a wide hallway to a set of double doors, which swung open silently before she even knocked. Sophia stood near the window, her silhouette framed by the panoramic view of the city skyline. She turned as he entered, and for a moment, neither spoke. Her expression shifted from composed professionalism to something softer, almost apologetic, as recognition dawned between them. "Randall," she said finally, her voice steady but tinged with unease. "Thank you for coming." He swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "You're welcome," he replied evenly. "Though I have to admit, I wasn't expecting this." She gestured for him to sit, taking a seat across from him at a sleek conference table. For a long moment, she simply looked at him, as if searching for the right words. Finally, she sighed softly. "I owe you an explanation," she began, folding her hands in front of her. "That night, it wasn't random. I knew about your garage, about your reputation for solving problems others couldn't or wouldn't touch. My father always believed in finding talent where others overlooked it. After his passing, I tried to carry that philosophy forward, but—" She hesitated, her voice faltering slightly. "It's harder than I thought. We've become distant, corporate, safe." Randall leaned back in his chair, his skepticism palpable. "So you drove past my shop on purpose?" She nodded, guilt flickering across her features. "Yes, I wanted to see how you operated, to understand what made you different. And when my car broke down, it confirmed everything I suspected. You treated me like a person, not a problem to fix or a transaction to complete. That's rare these days, especially in our industry." Her admission hit him like a punch to the gut. Part of him wanted to feel angry, betrayed even, but another part couldn't deny the truth in her words. He remembered the desperation in her eyes that night, the way she'd clutched her phone like it was a lifeline. Whatever games she was playing, they weren't entirely self-serving. "And Michael Grayson?" Randall asked pointedly. "What's his role in all this?" Sophia's lips tightened, and she glanced away briefly. "Michael works for me, but he doesn't always agree with my methods. He thinks I'm too idealistic, too sentimental. Bringing someone like you into the fold, it's risky. You're not polished enough for the boardroom. But I need people who remember what it means to care about more than profit margins." Randall let her words sink in, weighing them against everything he knew, or thought he knew, about Portland Motors. "So what happens now?" he asked quietly. "If I say yes, does that mean I'm signing away my independence? Becoming part of the machine you claim to hate?" Her gaze sharpened, locking onto his with surprising intensity. "No," she said firmly. "That's not what I'm asking. I want you to help us change, Randall. To bring the values you embody into a system that's forgotten them. You'd still run your garage, I insist on it, but you'd also oversee one of our locations. Teach our teams what it means to serve, not just sell." For the first time since Grayson's visit, Randall felt a spark of hope ignite within him. It was a dangerous idea, reckless even, but wasn't that what life was about? Taking risks, embracing uncertainty, trusting that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest rewards? "What if I fail?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophia smiled faintly, leaning forward until their eyes met once more. "Then we fail together. But I believe in you, Randall. more than you realize. As they talked further, the weight of her trust settled over him like a mantle. By the time he left the office hours later, his mind was made up. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it, not because he had no other choice, but because he wanted to believe that change was possible. That even in a world driven by power and profit, there was still room for integrity, for humanity. The days following Randall's decision to accept Sophia's offer passed in a blur of activity. He spent his mornings at the garage, mentoring the young mechanics he'd hired and ensuring that every repair met his exacting standards. In the afternoons, he commuted to Portland Motors' premium location, a sleek, glass-walled facility on the outskirts of the city, where he began training the staff in the art of problem-solving with heart. It wasn't easy. Some employees bristled at his unorthodox methods, while others were skeptical of his rough-around-the-edges demeanor. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. Randall's presence rippled through the workplace like a stone dropped into still water. He encouraged open dialogue between technicians and customers, reminding everyone that behind every car was a person with a story worth hearing. He implemented a policy where no repair, no matter how minor, would be dismissed without explanation, and insisted that all estimates include transparent breakdowns of costs. At first, the changes felt jarring, even intrusive, but as weeks turned into months, the results spoke for themselves. Customer satisfaction soared, repeat business increased, and morale among the team improved dramatically. Sophia noticed too. She made regular appearances at the shop, observing quietly from the sidelines before pulling Randall aside for updates. Their conversations grew longer, more personal, often stretching late into the evening. They talked about everything: the challenges of leadership, the weight of legacy, the sacrifices they'd made along the way. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a shared vulnerability that neither had expected but both welcomed. One night, after a particularly grueling day, they found themselves alone in her office overlooking the city. The skyline glittered below, a tapestry of lights softened by the haze of twilight. Sophia leaned against the edge of her desk, arms crossed loosely over her chest, while Randall sank into one of the leather chairs opposite her. For a moment, neither spoke, content to let the silence stretch between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. "You've done amazing work here," Sophia said finally, breaking the quiet. Her voice was soft, tinged with something Randall couldn't quite place. Admiration? Gratitude? Something else entirely? "I didn't do it alone," he replied, glancing up at her. "Your team stepped up when it mattered most." She shook her head slightly, a wry smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "They stepped up because you believed in them, because you showed them what was possible." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Randall shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. Praise had never been his strong suit. He preferred action over accolades. But there was something different about this. About her. "Why me?" he asked suddenly, the question tumbling out before he could stop it. "Out of everyone, why did you choose me?" Sophia hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the window. Outside, the city buzzed with life, oblivious to the weight of the moment inside the room. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured but laced with emotion. "Because you reminded me of my father," she admitted, turning back to face him. "Not just in how you work, but in how you see people. He always said success isn't measured by profit margins or stock prices. It's measured by the lives you touch. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. Until you reminded me." Randall stared at her, struck by the raw honesty in her confession. Here was a woman who carried the weight of an empire on her shoulders, yet still yearned for connection, for authenticity. In that instant, he realized they weren't so different after all. Both of them were trying to navigate worlds that demanded perfection while grappling with their own flaws. Both of them searching for a way to leave a mark that mattered. As the weeks turned into months, their professional partnership deepened into something neither had anticipated. Late-night strategy sessions became opportunities to share stories, laughter, and occasionally tears. Subtle gestures, a lingering glance, a brush of fingers during a handshake, hinted at emotions neither dared to name aloud. Yet the tension remained palpable, simmering beneath the surface like a storm waiting to break. Then came the evening that changed everything. It started innocuously enough. Randall stayed late at the shop, reviewing inventory reports and finalizing plans for a new apprenticeship program. As he packed up to leave, his phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Can we talk?" Curiosity piqued. He drove back to headquarters, parking in the now familiar visitor lot. The building was eerily quiet at this hour, its usual hum replaced by the faint echo of his footsteps on marble floors. He found her in her office, standing near the window with a glass of wine in hand. Her expression was guarded, her posture tense. "What's wrong?" Randall asked immediately, closing the door behind him. Sophia turned to face him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I got a call today," she began, her voice trembling. "From the board. They're unhappy with the changes I've made, with how much autonomy I've given you." Randall's stomach sank. "What does that mean?" "It means—" She paused, swallowing hard. "It means I might lose control of the company if I don't start playing by their rules. And if I push back." Her voice trailed off, leaving the implication hanging heavily in the air. For a long moment, neither spoke. The enormity of the situation settled over them like a suffocating blanket. Randall knew what she was risking. Not just her career, but her legacy. Everything she'd worked for. "You shouldn't have to choose," he said finally, stepping closer. "Between doing what's right and keeping your power." Sophia laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "Life doesn't give us choices like that, Randall." He reached out then, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Maybe not, but we can make our own." Their eyes locked, and in that fleeting moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. The barriers they had so carefully constructed, the doubts, the fears, the deliberate distance, began to dissolve under the weight of their shared struggles. Without a word, Sophia took a step closer, her presence filling the space between them. Randall hesitated for only a heartbeat before closing the gap, his hand brushing hers in a touch that lingered longer than it should have. The air shifted, charged with something neither was ready to name, but both felt too deeply to ignore. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as their faces hovered inches apart, the tension between them crackling like sparks in the quiet room. Then, with a soft exhale, Sophia tilted her head slightly, her gaze flickering to his lips before meeting his eyes again. Randall's voice caught in his throat, replaced by the faintest whisper of resolve. "Whatever happens next," he said quietly, his words hovering in the charged silence, "we'll figure it out." Sophia nodded, her expression unreadable but still vulnerable. She gave him a small, tremulous smile, one that held more meaning than either of them dared to articulate aloud. In the days that followed, their connection deepened in ways neither of them had anticipated. Randall balanced his dual roles in the garage and the shop with newfound purpose, while Sophia navigated the treacherous waters of corporate politics with quiet determination. It hadn't been easy. There had been long nights filled with uncertainty, moments when doubt crept in. But through it all, there was an undeniable sense of solidarity between them. They had become each other's anchor, their bond growing stronger with each challenge they faced together. Subtle gestures, a lingering glance across a crowded room, a brush of fingers during a handshake, suggested emotions simmering just beneath the surface. And though neither of them had expressed what was to come, the unspoken promise of something more hung between them like a fragile thread, waiting to be pulled taut. Perhaps they were already on the brink of something neither of them had allowed themselves to imagine. This story makes us reflect on the choices that define us and the courage it takes to step into the unknown. What would you do if fate handed you a second chance? Comment below. If you enjoyed this tale of redemption and resilience, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey. See you in the next video.